Hey everybody, Questwise here, and this is going to be sort of a teaser video for a series of videos that I'm planning to do soon. Probably in a couple of weeks, I'm going to start a new series, and I wanted to give you a little bit of background, and I'll talk a little bit about it throughout the series as I'm doing it as well too. But I wanted to give you a little bit of background into what I'm thinking about, what I'm sort of mulling over, what I'm reading in order to prepare for this series. So this is an idea that I got, and I'm not going to give too much away because I want it to be a surprise. And if you follow the Facebook page at all, and I hope you do, and I'll try to put a link down in below if I remember in the down in the notes as to where you can check out the official Questwise Facebook page. But I put a little teaser up the other day of an idea, and what I want to do is I want to look at. I'm starting with this. This is Joseph Campbell's The Hero with a Thousand Faces. I want to try a solo role-playing experience in which I study, I sort of follow. I want to try to experience and I want to try to understand better the hero's journey. I'm using a couple of different books, a couple of different things I've been reading. And what I want to do is I want to touch upon the roots of folklore, the roots of mythology. I want to study and look at the archetypes and see how those are pertinent and if they're useful in role playing as a whole, as a hobby. Now, I strongly believe they are, but I want to try to articulate to you how they're useful and how they're actually a foundation of the role-playing hobby. One of the things that I've learned over my time of sort of studying, and if you've probably heard me talk about this before, but the Advanced Dungeons and Dragons second edition Player's Handbook and Dungeon Master's Guide was my impetus to go to college to study history. When I got there, what I found more interesting than just history was a couple of things. Languages, especially ancient languages, and folklore, or mythologies of different cultures and different civilizations. That was what really enamored me, and that was what I really started to sort of pick out of my history studies. Languages in that where and my interest really came down to what were the roots, what were the bases of these stories, of these languages? How did that sort of spread of knowledge and storytelling and myth making become what it is that we have today? So instantly I turned to Joseph Campbell. He is the master of this kind of stuff. And if you haven't checked out any of his stuff, I highly encourage you to do it. I would recommend the first one you pick up would be The Hero with a Thousand Faces. There's some other great ones out there. The Romance of the Grail. There's a new one out, a newish one out called Goddesses, where he talks and he delves into the concepts of the roots of our beliefs and the roots of our sort of myths and legends and folklore, and how they're connected and how he tries to go back to the source on a lot of things. What The Hero with a Thousand Faces is kind of at its core is that all stories share these archetypal characters. That they all have, no matter what sort of folklore or legend you're reading, there's always these certain archetypes that seem to pop up over and over again. Why is that? Why is that every culture seems to be drawing from the same kind of core thought? Some kind of is it the pure human experience of what it's like for us to be alive and how we experience things? And this book is packed with amazing stuff. This will blow your mind. It really, really will. It's an amazing book. But some of the other things, reading that and rereading it, it's probably my third time kind of going through it, brought out a bunch of other things as well too, and a couple of books that I had forgotten I even had purchased long ago. Most of them at suggestions of fellow friends and coworkers. One of them, which has a really corny title, called Witches, Werewolves, and Fairies. This one's by Claude. I cannot pronounce the last name. I'll hold it up here for you if you want to take a look at it. But this is really interesting. This talks about shapeshifters in the medieval culture, in the Middle Ages, but more so than that, sort of the cultural backgrounds behind otherworldly beings and how those came about. And again, the sort of roots and the myths and the legends behind those things. What were the core? What made somebody believe that somebody could turn from a man into a wolf or vice versa? Um, what made people believe that witches consorted with dark powers? And he goes into a lot of different cultural backgrounds and ideas. One of the other ones, and I love this book, and in fact, I just talked recently briefly to a subscriber who had mentioned this book from one of my other videos, The Secret Commonwealth by Robert Kirk, who was an Anglican priest. This is great. At one point, I can't remember what year, 17th century, he went around and collected the beliefs of some of the people in the villages, and the idea that even though many of them were Christian, they still had this belief in fey creatures and elves and fauns and fairies, that they were still integral into their part of their beliefs, and how not to piss these things off because they were very, very touchy and picky, and how to sort of live at peace with them, and where do those beliefs come from, and why are they still so prevalent in a culture that had changed over time. And then this one I had forgotten this is actually an essay that is written by Kathleen Herbert. It's called Looking for the Lost Gods of England. And this is really great. This is an academic essay that she wrote about some of the older gods of England that sort of predated some of the stuff that we know about in sort of modern mythology, and how those gods evolved, and belief in those gods evolved beyond that, and the coming of Christianity, and how some of those beliefs were integrated into those into the Christian beliefs as the two cultures kind of clashed and stuff as well too. Very cool little essay. I had totally forgotten I had picked this up. This was at a urging from a fellow bookseller when I was in the book industry, and really glad I did, because it's a cool little essay. I'd love to find out if she's written anything else about this type of time period. But so that's my kind of teaser. Those are the things I'm looking at currently that I'm going to try and do a solo role-playing experience in which I'm trying to sort of embrace the hero's journey, embrace the roots of storytelling, the hobby of storytelling, the culture of storytelling, of myth making, of where these things came from, and how you can see those things, those archetypes, those storytelling aspects within your role-playing experience. That's one of my favorite things. Like I said, starting with AD&D second edition was really my kind of core game, and that game really made me appreciate Castles and Crusades as well too, because they use that sort of same concept. They're drawing from that same aspect, that they're taking these myths, these legends, these folklore, and they're integrating it into more modern ideas of what fantasy are, and making that into a role-playing game so that you can experience that as well too. Now, I love all aspects of role-playing games, but there are some times, there's certain games, and I'm talking strictly at this point sort of fantasy games, that really advance those concepts, that we become almost like superhuman characters in this crazy world, almost more leaning towards an anime type of called play, like that style of play. For me, my core and my real true love is the ones that are sort of based upon history and or those classic themes of mythology and folklore. Things like, the tales of Arthur, the ideas of drawn from the Iliad and Homer's Iliad and the Trojan War, things that are drawn from Beowulf. I love those concepts, and I love being able to take and read things like these books that I just showed you and integrating them into a game. I'm going to use two modern games. One's a board game, card game kind of idea, and I'm going to use that in order to sort of create the aspect of my world and my character. And I'm going to take those ideas and I'm going to bring them into a solo role-playing game that, and if you've seen the Facebook post, you already know what's happening. And then run a campaign, several sessions. I'm going to do those live here on YouTube, using the concept I've taken from the board game, and try to embrace the idea of the hero's journey and the hero with 1,000 faces. And as I do so, try to call out those aspects that Joseph Campbell shows that are sort of inherent in every story ever told. I'm Questwise, and until next time, stay safe and game on, my friend.